So I just want to take a quick minute and talk about the guys from Yakima Valley Marine. Dan Allen has been a great dealer to work with. He has put me in 2 great boats and has a wide selection of boats to choose from. Whether you're a weekend warrior looking to tear up some bass and walleye, a guide looking for that perfect setup for salmon, or even just a family looking for a good ski or pontoon boat, go see Dan and his team and get the next boat you want. He has a new and used to choose from brands like Lund, Crestliner, Duckworth, Weldcraft, Mastercraft, and a ton more. Make Valley Marine your destination for your next purchase. Plus, Max and his team in the service department are always on point, can fix your current issues with your boat. They are a full-service dealer with all kinds of accessories in the store to help you outfit your current boat or your new purchase. If you're looking for a new rod for whatever fish you go after, check out FX Custom Rods. We have launched the Angler Extreme Series that will have the rod you're looking for. With Angler Extreme Series, they are a great rod at a perfect price. You won't be sorry for putting one in your hands. And after you get one of those, the custom side is always a perfect gift for a fisherman, customized how you want it from pretty much any color, team theme rods, armed forces. The care taken into these rods is unbelievable and is one of a kind that will put more fish in your boat. If you're looking for an alternative for live bait, check out Slimer's Bait Company. Awesome baits for bass and walleye that truly look alive in the water and will absorb pretty much whatever scent you want to use. Check out Fish Face Goods for all of your outdoor themed clothing. They have some awesome t-shirts, mugs, caps, and more. Troy at Fish Face designs all the shirts himself, and he has a knack for coming up with some pretty cool art for those items. On the show today, I'm speaking with Jason Przekurat, Walleye Pro, NWT Championship winner, 2-time FLW Walleye Angler of the Year. Jason is an accomplished walleye pro with tons of knowledge that he shares with us. We talk about contour trolling and using electronics to find walleye. He breaks down what he looks for before even starting to fish. This is a great show full of great information to help you get on fish and bring success to your next trip out for walleye. Let's welcome in Jason. How you doing?
Hey guys, pretty good. How you guys doing?
Not too bad. Kind of give everybody a little background about you, how you got your start in the fishing.
Sure.
And all that stuff.
It's always interesting to hear stories about how guys got started. Basically, with my career, it kind of started as a fluke, if you want to say, because I was a muskie fisherman growing up, my teenage years, and then when I got out of high school, I decided I wanted to kind of start using my brain a little bit more when I fished, and that's what kind of persuaded me to start chasing walleyes a little bit more. And I was sitting at work one day and I looked in a magazine and I saw a little ad in there for a Pro-Am tournament that was going to be on Mille Lacs Lake. And I thought, man, what a cool deal, let's just go fish for a few days with some pros and see how much we can learn, and then I can just, call it a good time and see if I can take any of that knowledge back to my own boat.
There you go.
And as it turned out, I ended up second place in that first event and kind of got the bug right off the bat. I really couldn't believe how much I learned in 3 short days of fishing with 3 different pros, and that was the same year I got married, and I bought a bigger boat that year. I was going to take it to a team format the following year just to kind of see if I was any good at this thing, and I'll be pretty blunt with you. For about 2 or 3 years, I mean, once you get behind that steering wheel and you got to make your own decisions, it's a lot tougher than you think.
Yeah.
And for me, it was about 2 or 3 years where I really didn't, put the pieces together, if you want to say. So I was ready to quit walleye fishing tournaments at that time, and this was back in the '90s. So this is 20-some years ago, and it was my wife that told me to, keep pursuing it. And, I got a lot invested already, and, time and money and boats and equipment and everything else. And so I really took it to heart at that point in time. And I said, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it all out. And I basically learned as much as I could every day on the water from that point on. And that's how I still pursue walleye fishing to this day. And, all I really did was I kept learning the game. I kept moving up from a team circuit up to a Pro-Am circuit. through the RCLs, through the FLWs, into the National Walleye Tour, and I just kept going on and on and on. And, you know, it sounds like, you know, I just did it overnight, but it's been 20-some years.
Sure.
And, you know, yeah, I've got a few good titles to my name, you know, a couple Angler of the Years. You know, I've won qualifiers, I've won the championships in 2 different circuits. But it was all with a lot of hard work, you know. It wasn't just something that I jumped into and it happened, you know. I had to earn everything I had. So, you know, it's been quite a ride, and that's for sure not over. I quit my full-time job in 2007 is when I actually quit working for Gander Mountain and pursued a full-time career in tournament fishing and promoting. So, you know, it's been pretty interesting, to say the least.
Well, congratulations to you for that. I mean, that's a lot of people's, you know, dream is be able to do that stuff for a living. So
it really is. I get asked that all the time. You know, you got the dream job, and you know, yeah, I do. I love my job. It's always changing. It's never boring, and you know, you really put in as much as you want to get out of it. So
sure,
that's kind of how I pursued my career.
Let me ask you this real quick, because you know, going back to, like you said, when you first started, okay, you had, you know, that first instant of success, and then you said it was a struggle for a while. You know, what was one of the biggest hurdles that you had as far as trying to get over that hump? I mean, you know, a lot of people have certain internal struggles or, you know, external struggles. So what was it that really kind of got you?
You know, the biggest thing for me was, you know, I fished that whole first year as an amateur when I got that initial bug for tournaments, and you know, the next year I jumped into the driver's seat of the boat, and that's when everything changed. You know, you thought you really knew what you're doing. Well, yeah, you can catch fish, but when somebody takes you to the fish, it's easy to catch them. So now you're behind the driver's wheel, and you have to make that decision. Okay, things changed from yesterday. What's different? How do I find the fish? I only got 8 hours to do it, or else I'm going home in last place. And it really comes down to, you know, a couple things. One is confidence. You really need a lot of confidence, because when you jump into any tournament format, if you don't believe you can beat everybody out there, you might as well stay home. I mean, if you don't believe that, you're never going to win. So that's one thing. And number two is just the knowledge of the fish. You know, why do they always change day to day? Nothing really stays the same. You know, and it's just time on the water. That's the biggest thing. You know, I've got a boy that's just turned 18 years old, and he's a bass fishing fanatic. The kid's out almost 7 days a week, and we run around here. We just went out today and fished bass again. We got a little tournament coming up. But I told him the last thing you should ever worry about is sponsorships and products and getting deals and all that stuff. That'll all come down the road. The first thing you need to learn is how to catch the fish you're after. You know, everything else will follow. So that's kind of how I got through the tough years, the 2 or 3 tough years. You know, one of the things I would do is I'd stay after a tournament after I'd finish, you know, in the bottom 10%. I'd stay after and listen to all the guys that did good. You know, instead of just getting in the truck with my tail between my legs and heading home, I would stay and listen and learn and see what they were doing. And, you know, and even if I had some extra time, I would stay and fish an extra day just to see if I could do what they did.
Gotcha.
You know, just little things like that is how I kind of pursued that, you know, trying to get the knowledge of the fish and just getting better every day.
Sure. Well, and, you know, that's great advice. You know, one of the things that I've noticed with a lot of the tournaments that we fish out here, I don't know if it's the same with you guys, you know, there's a few people that might say something about, you know, how they were fishing or what they were doing, but a lot of them, they don't really give out that secret. So, you know,
sure.
even if you're kind of hanging around, sometimes it's hard to pull information, especially on, you know, bodies of water that you may not be familiar with.
For sure. But it's not even the guys that won, you know, it's guys that maybe did well, and you overheard a conversation they were having with their buddies, you know, how the weigh-ins were going on, or just anything, trying to pick up little tips here and there. You know, I'm not the guy that's going to just come flat out and ask them, you know, hey, how'd you catch them? You know, you just kind of listen and learn and that's how I do it.
Gotcha. Well, that's good advice. You know, it's like you said, the time on the water it's hard to replace that with anything. So
for sure. You know, so many times we've been in tournaments that, hey, we're on Lake Erie in April again next year. Well, I guarantee you, if we were on Lake Erie this year in April, it's going to be different next year in April. It's always different. You know, you might think it's the same week, same body of water. Well, nothing ever stays the same. It's very rare that you really go to the same areas and catch fish year after year after year.
Well, that's interesting because, you know, there's the tournaments that we have out here, they're mainly on, you know, we have the Columbia River, and then we've got a couple reservoirs and some natural lakes. Generally, you know, depending on water temperature and, you know, flows and things like that, most of the time those fish are pretty predictable as far as being in the same locations year after year. It's funny to hear you say that with Lake Erie.
You know, it's always different because there's always something's a little bit off in the system. You know, it might be, like you said, the flow might be a little different. Maybe the water clarity changed. It's not as clear as it was, you know, last year when you really caught them good. You know, there's always little things you need to pay attention to. It's, you know, just for an example, here at home, we fish the Wisconsin River system, which is not that big. You know, we have like 12-mile sections in between dams. And, you know, but the first thing we do before we go out every day is you know, we call the lock or call the dam and see, you know, how many cubic feet per second are coming out of that dam that day, you know, to get a gauge at the flow.
Sure.
That's going to dictate kind of where you're going to begin and what you're going to be looking for. So, you know, just some simple things like that, but it's always a learning game.
Oh yeah, definitely. So what were some of the, you know, influence you had as far as, you know, people in the fishing industry before you really got into it?
Yeah, you know, I didn't really have many influences, if you want to say. My mom and dad, neither one fished. I had two older brothers that are 9 and 10 years older than me. They both fish, but, you know, I was the younger brother that they never wanted to drag along with them because they were so much younger, you know, and that's one of the reasons I bought a boat when I was 18 years old, you know, just because I didn't want to have to ask somebody to take me. But the biggest influence I had was Norb Wallach, who, you know, back in the 90s was one of the first full-time professional fishermen. And he actually grew up in my town here in Stevens Point, Wisconsin. And then he moved to northern Wisconsin later on in life. But Norb was the one that told me to fish, you know, an entire year as an amateur just to learn things. He said, you got decent talent. He said, you just got to go out and learn. So I guess without him saying that, I probably would have never got into tournament fishing as much as I did. But, you know, fishing that first event, take second place, and just got that bug, and then just took it from there. But, you know, Norb was the guy that really, really told me to do it. So I would have to give props to him. But other than that, I mean, it wasn't really anybody specific that told me to do it.
Sure. Well, you know, and like you said, you were working at Gander Mountain before, but, you know, what was the decision as far as saying, okay, you know what, this is it, I'm going to do this for a living? Yeah,
huge decision. I mean, you know, when I got married in 1994, that's kind of when I started the career, and the whole goal was to fish for a living. Never really thinking it was going to happen, obviously. That's just a far-fetched dream. But, you know, I just kept working hard and spending a lot of time and money and, you know, just fishing tournaments and going. And I had those really good years in the early 2000s and mid-2000s, and I was starting to rack up a pretty good bank account. But at the same time, you know, the sponsorships were okay. They weren't bad at all. They were okay. But, you know, in order to get to the point where I wanted, I had to commit full-time with some of my sponsors.
Sure.
And, you know, it just came to a point when I won in 2007. I won the Red Wing tournament for the FLW, and then I won Angler of the Year right after that. And that was kind of you know, that's what broke the camel's back right there. And I said, well, if I'm never going to do it full-time, it's now or never. So I committed full-time in 2007, and then, of course, '08 was the stock market crashed and everything come tumbling down, and it was tough. Sponsorships were, going the wrong direction. But I stuck to my guns, and, you had to work twice as hard for half the money, and you just keep pushing along, and now things are back where they were, prior to 2008, and things are pretty good right now.
Yeah. It seems like the industry and that part of it seems like it's going really strong. So.
Yeah. I don't see, economy's good, the market's good, people are selling boats and tackle and electronics and everything else, and everything's going in the right direction.
A lot of people I don't think realize how much work is involved in doing something like that full time, because you're not just fishing. I mean,
no.
You've got a plate full of commitments that you have to make, whether it be speaking commitments or seminars or, kind of talk about that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we work 7 days a week. It's not always a 9-to-5 job, and that's the difference. It's, some days it's, doing a podcast at 7:30 at night on a Thursday, or working Sunday night for a sponsor somewhere, and but the whole thing is it's you're your own boss and you really dictate what's going on. So, for example, most of the summer is fishing related. I probably do 8 or 9 tournaments a year, and then do some other promotional gigs with people on the water and a few guide trips. But like now at this time of year, when we get midsummer, it's time to start looking into January, February, March already. So, for example, next week I'm going to ICAST in Orlando and sit down with some of my sponsors and look at next year and see where we're at, make sure everything's okay. We need to step it up or whatever. Look at some new products, do some promotional work with them. But then it's jumping right into seminars. So most of my seminars that I do in the wintertime, I book myself. So, for example, last year I did, I believe 23 was the number.
Nice.
23 seminars throughout 3 months in the wintertime. So that's pretty much, every week we're somewhere. But all that planning starts now. So it's always interesting. And then at the same time, when I get sick of fishing about the end of August, 1st of September, when I'm pretty burned out, that's pretty much the end of my season for tournaments. The boat goes away, we start ordering another one for next year, getting all the products that we need for it, getting everything lined up. It's just one big cycle. So it's, on the water, prepping for winter, getting everything ready for spring, and then start the whole cycle over again. So it's nonstop. And then, in the meantime, obviously you're trying to catch fish, and then you're, trying to make new products and get those field tested. And so when they hit the market, everything's good. And it's always something. So it's always a fun challenge.
Oh yeah. Well, like you said, it's keeping you busy, but, as far as like your sponsors and stuff go, how much do they impact, let's say, any of your time on the water?
I carry 13 sponsors with me right now, and every one of them seems to be a little bit different. And it all depends on, what their strategy is and what they want out of me. But, a lot of it's off the water. I can't honestly say that any of them restrict my time on the water or anything like that. It's mostly off the water, and that's the way this market has been the last 10 years, is that they don't really worry about what you do on the water as much anymore as what you do off the water.
Sure.
Just marketing and promoting products and, trying to get all the new stuff developed and, come with ideas, all kinds of different things. It's endless. So. Yeah,
no, exactly. What are your thoughts on the National Pro staff? And the reason why I ask this is because, bringing up the whole sponsor thing, a lot of people think when you get sponsored that you're going to get free items and you're going to get this and they're going to do this for you. And, I kind of fell into that trap a few years ago. And, it was one of those things where it's like, no, not really, because, you really have to put in, like you said, you have to put in years. And once you finally do get into something like that, The demands on you for what you're doing for your sponsors is something, that's more so than what they're doing for you.
Mm-hmm. Correct. And it really comes back to the value you're going to be to that sponsor. This whole National Pro Staff thing, I'm not that familiar with it. I do know kind of what it is, but I've never looked into it. This whole deal with sponsorships, it actually kind of bothers me at times because of how it's changed over the years, but how people perceive what's supposed to happen with a sponsorship or how it's supposed to happen. And for years and years and years, I got some product from sponsors that I even paid for it. I was happy to get 20% off. That was a huge deal. Or, geez, when you got 50% off, that was even better.
Right.
And just working my way through the sponsorships and the different levels, to me, was kind of fun. I didn't want any free stuff. I'm not the guy that asks for free stuff and never will be. But just to work your way through the levels is, it's more gratifying because you've earned it once you get there.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, definitely.
For example, like I said before, some of my sponsors, to get to the ultimate level with them, I had to commit full time or basically quit my job. Well, that's a huge commitment, but once I did it, it's very gratifying. And then they know you're committed, you're involved 100%, and everybody's happy on both ends. But it took 20 years to get there.
Right.
And that people don't understand that. Nothing happens overnight. I bought a boat every year for 24 years, and probably for the first 15 of them, I never made a dime on those boats. I lost money. So, it's just little things like that people need to understand. You need to earn your way up. So.
Sure. It's kind of funny you bring up the whole boat thing. When you guys are going from year to year and you're getting your new boat, that's got to be somewhat stressful because, you've got to be able to rig it. And obviously you're ordering it to what you want, but I mean, to me it seems like, okay, so you're getting rid of the other boat, you're getting the new boat. Now you got to hope that, it meets up with the timelines.
Mm-hmm. It's always, I don't mind rigging my own boats, I guess. It's something that I'm used to now after years of doing it. But about the time you get your boat set up exactly the way you want it and everything's working good, then it's time to get rid of it,
Yeah.
So, it's a vicious cycle that way. But, I rig all my own boats, put all my graphs on, trolling motors, kicker motors, talons, everything, rod holders, the whole ball of wax, and wire everything myself, because then if I do have a problem on the water, I know exactly where I need to look. And I'll tell you, it saved my life a few times, and it saved a few tournaments for me. And one time I had a GPS go down, and I didn't know why, and it was a day 4 of an FLW, and I went under the dash, and I thought this could be why. And I looked, here's a wire that came undone, and, grabbed the Leatherman, put everything back together, and finished off the day and took second in that tournament. But if I wouldn't have known where anything was, I might have taken 0 fish that day and ended up in 10th place, instead of second. So
Sure.
That's kind of why I do everything, because then I know where it is, I know it's done right, and everything should be good.
Definitely. So, real quick, in your opinion, what is one of the better accomplishments? Would it be Angler of the Year, or would it be, winning the Tour Championship?
They're all good accomplishments. I would probably say Angler of the Year for sure would be the better one for me, just because of the fact that it's the hardest thing to win. You have to be so consistent over a 3 or 4 month period, sometimes 5 months. You got to catch a limit every day. Back when I won it in 2007, we were running 200 and some boats per tournament that year. So to win it back then was darn near double of what it is now.
Right.
So it was twice as hard. You had so many people fishing. And so back then it was very gratifying to win it. But now it's just getting harder and harder and harder. And the reason being is that there's no secrets anymore. Anything is available to anybody, no matter if you're 20 years old or you're 50 years old. You can buy the best stuff. You can get the best equipment. All the little spots are all on the mapping and the GPS and chips. There's no, that little hump that you used to know 20 years ago. Well, everybody knows where it is now.
Mm-hmm.
So now it really comes down to A, who knows how to read their electronics the best, and B, who's able to really figure out the fish the quickest. That's the only thing that separates the good guys from the really good guys now.
Definitely.
So,
I agree.
That's what I look at. I'm probably the one guy that uses my electronics, especially side imaging, more than anybody. It's because I want to know the spot better than the next guy, and that's the only way I can separate myself from the next guy.
Sure.
But that's kind of how I use it.
Well, let's kind of switch gears. We'll start talking about some, tactics and that kind of stuff. Right now, here we've got 100-degree weather. We've had it now for about a week and a half, and It's going to continue. And so, the lakes and reservoirs, we're going to get water temperatures up in 70, 75, within the next week. So when you're approaching hot weather, hot water temperatures, or warm water temperatures, I should say,
mm-hmm.
What is it that you're looking for, you're keying on to tell you where the walleye might be located at?
Sure. Obviously, the warmer it gets, the deeper they're going to end up. And, it really comes down to the first thing I got to look at in the system. If you're getting into really, really warm water, do you have a thermocline? If you've got a thermocline set up in your system, well, then you need to be at the thermocline or higher. That's where the fish will be. In most circumstances, we don't really deal with thermoclines that often. So I'm just going to use Lake Oahe as an example last year. When I won the championship, that was in August. It was really hot. Water temps were high. And going into that event, I had some ideas of where I was going to fish due to prior tournaments from years past out there. And going into that event, probably 2 or 3 weeks earlier, I started asking around a little bit, what's getting caught? You look at the internet, are they getting big fish? And there we could catch 2 over 20 and the rest had to be under 20. And the whole word on the street was nobody's catching any overs, no fish over 20 inches. And I thought, well, that's interesting because I know they're in the system. They're not, and I'm gone. And when I got to the lake, I looked at some of my deep trees from spots I've fished in the past. And when I caught them good in those trees during the summer months years ago, the water was now 30 feet higher than it was when I was there, 6, 8, 10 years ago. And I looked at some of those trees and I said, well, they're 60, 65 feet down. But I do believe the fish are going to be in them because it's so warm. It's going to drive the bait fish deeper and it's going to drive the walleyes deeper, and that's probably why they're not catching these overs. And I went to the first group of trees, the first day of practice, the first spot, and I caught 4 fish, 60 feet down, over 110 feet of water. And I said, this is perfect. The fish are down there. I can catch them. I know how to get down there to them. Now all I need to do is look for every group of trees on the system and find out where the big ones are. And it didn't take me but a day or day and a half, and I pretty much had everything figured out that I needed. I actually didn't even fish a day and a half before the championship because I didn't want anybody to see me fishing that program. I was confident the fish weren't going anywhere. It was the middle of summer and water was hot, and water levels were going to stay the same. And sure enough, I go there the first day of the tournament, and there's not a boat in sight.
Nice.
And I caught a big bag day one and had my 2 overs in less than 25 minutes, and the rest is history. So, it's just things like that. It's warmer weather, deeper. I've caught fish down to 84 feet on the bottom.
Wow.
In the middle of summer. So years ago, I would have never said I would have caught a fish in 84 feet of water. But you can never say never. So
sure. Well, how was it bringing them up from that depth, in those temperatures?
Yeah, it was kind of, I couldn't bring them up fast to begin with. I didn't want to. I was running braid, and I was pretty much running direct down to the crankbait, so I was easing them up anyway. But luckily for us, that was a catch and kill tournament, so we didn't have to worry about live or dead.
Oh,
but as long as I kept them, kept bringing them up fairly slow, I had really no problems with them. So it wasn't that big a deal. And even that year, I caught them in 84 feet of water. I would say probably 80% of them stayed alive when
nice.
They brought them up.
So when they do a catch and kill like that, they're just, taking them out of the system? They don't want them in there, or what?
Yeah, they've got more than enough fish in their system, and basically the DNR, decides what they're going to do with these fish, and if it's going to be a catch and release or catch and kill. And in that system, that time of year, they decided to harvest all the fish caught in the tournament, and they just donate them to food pantries, in the local area, and then everybody's happy.
Sure. Well, at least that's getting used for a good cause.
For sure. Yep.
So is there, a huge effect as far as difference in, let's say, a river system in the hot weather compared to lakes and reservoirs?
Yeah, when it comes to river systems, you've always got some type of flow going on, so you've got that recirculation of water, if you want to call it. And that definitely makes life a little bit easier when you're in the warm summer months. The fish probably won't be as deep just because of that. But when you get in any lake or reservoir that has no water flow and current and all that stuff and changing of water, it can get pretty stagnant. And that's why I'm saying don't be afraid to look deep. I mean, if your normal spots, your 30, 40-foot spots aren't producing, don't be afraid. I mean, 50, 60, 70, it's not uncommon to catch fish out there. So.
Now, do you do anything as far as, because, obviously, all the modern day electronics show surface temp, but are you doing anything as far as taking readings from certain depths as far as temperatures go?
No, I'm not. Actually, the only thing I ever look for is, like I said before, just a thermocline. If your system has a thermocline, all you need to do is put your sensitivity up to, jack it all the way up. And if you see a big thick band going through the center of your water column or somewhere in the water column, then you have a thermocline, and everything's going to be either at or above that thermocline. That's where the oxygen is. Everything below that line is going to be devoid of oxygen, and there's not going to be any game fish down there. So that's about all I really do any different, with electronics.
Now, are you you're running Humminbird, right?
Correct.
Okay. So let's talk about locating the walleye, as far as using electronics. You've got the people that run Humminbird, you've got people that run Lowrance. The same concepts really apply, at least in my opinion, they apply across the board.
For sure.
So when you're trying to locate walleye, what is it that, for one, how do you set your system up? Now, I know it's different for everybody, but kind of give an idea what you're doing and, what you're looking for.
Sure. Well, first and foremost, I don't really ever look for fish with my 2D sonar unless they're about 20 feet of water or deeper. It's something that most people don't understand, that, and I hear it almost weekly around here. Hey, I'm not marking any fish. And, what's going on? Is my graph not working? Well, first and foremost, if it's shallow water, less than 20 feet, the odds of the fish being under your boat while you drive over their head are pretty slim. You're only looking at about a 20-degree cone with normal, 2D sonar.
Right.
So you could basically take the depth of water you're in and divide it by 3, and that's about what you're looking at underneath your boat. So if I'm in 20 feet of water, I'm only looking at about almost 7 feet of circumference below my boat. That's not a very big area, so the fish probably aren't going to sit in that little circle while you drive over their head. So that's why I really start using, my 2D sonar to locate fish in 20 feet of water deeper. Now, if I know the fish are in a system where they are not laying tight to the bottom or they are suspended, then I know I can drive around and look for these fish at 20 to 25 miles an hour, right? Like I said just a little bit ago, the odds of the fish laying under your boat as you idle over their head is very slim, in less than 20 feet of water. But now if I'm going 25 miles an hour, they're not going to outrun my boat.
Right.
And the only thing I do when I'm looking for fish at high speeds, and high speeds being 20 to 25, that's about the average. I turn my sensitivity up, not a lot, a little bit. I want to start seeing some stuff on my graph, some debris, some plankton and all that stuff. And then I also turn my chart speed faster, or my scroll speed, whatever you want to call it. So, for example, if my normal scroll speed is at 5, and I'm just idling around, I might turn it up to 7 or 8 when I'm out cruising around at 20 to 25. All right, now you got to also figure out what a fish is going to look like when you're driving around at 20 or 25. No matter what it is, even if I'm idling or if I'm driving around at 25, a good fish, and a good fish to me is anything over 3 pounds. A good fish will show up with some type of color on your 2D sonar. Okay? So many people think they see walleyes on their graph, and they're basically nothing. They might be a 1-inch minnow. All right? All the little marks you see on graphs when your sensitivity is a little high, that's all stuff in the water, plankton and little minnows. And, do yourself a favor sometime and just drop a 1/4-ounce jig with a 3-inch plastic on it down below your boat and see what that looks like below your transducer.
Amazing how big the arc can be.
Isn't that something? So many times I've seen guys that are fishing for walleyes that they're not even walleyes. And it drives me crazy. But when you start seeing color in any kind of arc, and on my graph I have yellow as my brightest sensitivity, so anything I see yellow is going to be, a decent return. That's going to be a good fish, usually 3 pounds or bigger. So then I immediately know, hey, that's something I probably want to chase. So, that's kind of how I locate fish. And how do I locate them if they're in shallow water, for example? Let's say they're in 5 to 10 feet of water. Well, I'm not going to see them with 2D sonar, no matter if I'm driving 20 miles an hour or 2 miles an hour. Then I rely on side imaging. I really, really slow down and scan off to the sides, 60, 70, 80 feet in both directions, and then I'm actively looking for fish in the shallow water.
Now, when you're looking at your side imaging, just maybe for people that don't have it or don't know it or looking to get into it, what is it that the fish shows up as when you're looking at it?
Sure. First of all, I want to just say that if anybody hasn't used side imaging yet, at least jump in the boat with somebody that has it.
No doubt.
It is that's the best technology we've had since I started fishing, hands down. Not a question asked. Side imaging will tell you everything about spots you're fishing, show you exactly what's down there with no guesswork. You don't even have to think twice about it. You can count the rocks, you can see the weeds, everything.
Yeah.
But to answer your question on what do fish look like, several ways to kind of explain it, but fish are going to be extremely small on side imaging. And all they really show up as is a little white, if you want to call it a speck, depending on how fast you're moving. The faster I am moving, the smaller the speck's going to be. The slower I'm moving, a little bit bigger the speck's going to be. But I've learned the easy way, and this is how I did it. I took my side imaging over to an area around me that has a bunch of carp. And when you've got 100 carp on both sides of your boat that are 2 to 4 pounds, you see them all on side imaging, and you know exactly what fish look like.
That's a good idea.
Well, it's that simple. I mean, and that's the thing I tell people with seminars, too, is and I do a lot of it on side imaging. You know, I'm like, hey, you don't know what you're looking at with side imaging. Do yourself a favor. Go to a clear body of water. Go look at something with your polarized sunglasses and then drive by it with your side imaging and compare the two. You'll know the answers of the questions you had within minutes, and, you know, it doesn't take you long to now understand what you're looking at with side imaging. So
sure. I always kind of, and I might be wrong when I say this, but I always kind of correlate it to an X-ray. That's what it reminds me of. You know, when you're looking at an X-ray, you see, you know,
pretty much.
Yeah, densities, as they get harder, they become a lot wider. And, you know, if you get a big fish off to the side, a lot of times it'll show up as what I call a hot white streak.
Correct.
And,
and if it's really big, you'll have a giant shadow behind them.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of times that shadow is easier to pick out than the fish itself.
Sure.
So there's so many tips and tricks, and, you know, and I learned a lot of it, you know, I self-taught myself a lot of it, just like I said, driving around in clear bodies of water. But, you know, go to YouTube and start looking up side imaging. Just punch in side imaging. You can sit and watch videos for hours.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, when I first started using it, that's what I did, you know, because I really wanted to see exactly what it was about, you know, and that was, I don't know, I guess it's been about 5-6 years ago.
Yep.
And
technology's only getting better and better and better. I mean, I don't know where they're going to go next, because it's so clear right now. I mean, just in 1 year's time, the technology is crazy good.
Now, do you run a lot of times what I'll do is I'll take a 2D and then I'll run my down scan over the top of it, so that, you know, you can really see, because a lot of times you'll get, you know, grass or weeds or certain types of weeds that you want to really distinguish what the difference is. On a 2D, it just shows up as a blob.
Great point. Yep.
You know, on the other, you can actually see whether it's grass or cabbage weed or, you know, something like that.
Yeah. So, for example, down imaging and 2D sonar, you know, when do I use one or the other? Anytime I have a question on my 2D sonar, I don't know what it is, down imaging or down scan, whatever units you have, will answer that question for you with what's down there really, really fast. You know, for example, is that a school of bait or is that a little brush pile? You know, 2D sonar, a lot of times you don't know. And if you just turn on down imaging, it'll answer that question for you really fast. You know, the problem with down imaging or down scan is you can't use that at high speed.
Right.
Okay, you know, if I'm out cruising around looking at fish at 20 miles an hour that are suspended, you know, down scan is no longer useful. So, you know, that down imaging it's got its moments. Anytime I have a question on what I'm seeing on 2D, I just flip on down imaging and bam, it answers my questions.
Yeah, it's amazing. When you're running your 2D, and like you were talking about earlier, as far as changing like your scroll speed or chart speed, do you do anything as far as ping speed when it comes to, you know, at a higher rate of speed compared to like if you're just motoring through?
No, I do not, actually. On our hummingbirds, we're pretty limited as our ping speeds, and it changes automatically on our units depending on how fast we're going, how fast our scroll speeds are. So it kind of changes it for us. Makes it pretty easy. But yeah, we don't change our ping speed on ours at all. But if you had an option, you definitely want to, you know, increase your ping speed the faster you go.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty easy to memorize that. You know, if you're going fast, make sure your ping speed's fast.
Excellent. What about color line?
You know, color line is a personal preference for many people. Really all color line does is kind of changes the bottom color for you to kind of decipher the difference, and it gives you separation. Sometimes it's better, sometimes it's worse. And really all you just want to play with your color line, turn it on, turn it off, change colors, and see which one you prefer the best. You know, with mine, you know, my color chart is just, on my hummingbird is just chart number 1, which is the yellow, but, you know, everybody has their personal preference, so just change it according to what you prefer, and everybody will be happy.
Sure. Well, You bring up a good point, and this was something I was going to ask you too. When you're running your 2D, let's say somebody doesn't have side imaging or down scan or whatever, and you've got walleye that are tight to the bottom, how do you get that target separation? Because, there's times where you might not even see them.
No. It's a proven fact that with 2D sonar, I mean, for example, on my unit, regular 2D sonar on the Humminbird Helix right now is about 2.5 inches. So the walleye would have to be that far off the bottom for me to see separation on my graph in 2D sonar. So many times you won't even see a walleye because it's laying belly to the bottom. You might decipher it as a rock or a little bump, but you don't know that's a walleye. Now with down imaging, that bottom separation changes drastically. You went from 2 to 2.5 inches. Now you're down to about a half inch. So, what many times you won't see walleyes under 2D, you will see them on your down imaging because your separation is so much finer, only a half inch. So that's the advantage of that too, that separation is. So the people with just 2D sonar, you got a belly to the bottom wall, you're going to have a tough time recognizing it.
Now, as far as zooming in, if you zoom in, let's say 2 times zoom or 4 times zoom on the bottom, let's say you're over 25 feet of water. Can you explain how that changes it?
Yeah, it just makes your picture bigger. So it's just magnifying that area that you're looking at. I can't even tell you the last time I used a zoom on my graph. It's been that long. And even in deep water. I mean, I've got enough knowledge in my graph that I can tell you what's a fish and what's not. I don't need to zoom in on it. But all a zoom really does is just magnifies that bottom, the bottom you're looking at.
Right.
Which could help you decipher, is that a rock on the bottom or is that a walleye laying belly to the bottom? It's still going to be hard to decipher which is which.
What I did years ago so that I could, and this was before I got side and down, so that I could distinguish what I was seeing on the bottom. If I saw something that looked like a fish or what I thought could be a fish where it was a bump on the bottom, if I had decently calm water, what I was doing was I was getting right over the top of them and, vertical jigging, and just to see if I could draw that fish up. Sure. If I saw any movement from that fish, okay, I knew that's what I was looking at. I'm looking at a fish. I'm not looking at a rock or, something like that. And
that's one way to do it, for sure.
And that really helped me distinguish what I was looking at underneath the boat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, if you don't have anything but 2D, that's one way to do it. Yeah, for sure.
So talking about trolling brake lines.
Okay.
If you're, well, I guess I should explain maybe, for some people that don't understand what a brake line is. I always classify it as that first steep drop off of a shore.
Correct.
Now, that being said, what could be, let's say, a small brake line compared to a large brake line?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and how I kind of describe it as tight contours or, relatively tapering contours. If I'm on a tight contour where it drops really pretty fast and those fish are laying at a specific depth, that's probably one of the hardest things to do is to control tight contours and yet keep your baits in the zone at all times to catch fish. Anytime I'm running tight contours, I'm usually not running any planer boards. I like to keep things right behind the boat. The farther I spread them out, obviously, the less control I have. I don't know how deep it is once I get, an offshore board out to the side. Tight contours, it's running them straight behind the boat, no matter how you want to get them down there. If you're in deeper water and you need to run lead core, or if you need to run a snap weight of some sort, or deep dive and crankbait, whatever you're using. the whole idea of it is to always know where those baits are 100% of the time. You know, just because you're following a tight contour with your 2D sonar as you're trolling. Remember, just because your boat's on the contour, that doesn't mean your lures are, you know, because they're 100 feet back or whatever they are. So you always got to remember, hey, maybe I need to swing my boat out wide to let my lures drag around the corner of this contour. You know, that's the whole key to it. So, you know, that's the difference between being a good fisherman or even a really good fisherman, is just knowing that all the time. You know, but if you're trolling contours that are relatively gradual, you know, it's pretty easy to fish. And then I can spread my lures out, put out a couple planer boards, probably put 2 lures out the back, and then you can, you know, cover more water as you're trolling those gradual breaks, and that's relatively simple to do. But tight contour trolling it's almost a lost art. You know, you don't see a lot of guys doing it anymore, and I don't know. It's something that I kind of like to do, and you know, it's fun knowing once you get it predicted and where the lures are and you start catching fish. It's fun.
Sure. Now, when you're doing that without planer boards on a tight contour like that, are you running different size rod lengths so that you can at least spread them out a little bit?
Yeah, you want to spread your lures as much as you possibly can from the boat. So I run 10.5 foot rods out the side, and then my 2 inside rods I would run like 6 or 6.5 foot rods, and I usually stand them almost pointed straight out the back, but up at a 45-degree angle. So I'm really spreading, you know, as much as I physically can, because I don't want to tangle my lures all the time. That's the problem.
Right.
You know, you really got to make sure your lures are in tune and your lines are spread. You don't want to turn too sharp, because then you're just going to be, you know, marrying all your baits together, and you're going to have problems. So, yeah, it's always a challenge.
Now, do you run, let's say if you're running crankbaits on something like that, are you running, let's say, a shallower running crankbait with a snap weight off to the side with, you know, maybe deeper divers off the back so that you can get that separation on your lures?
Yeah, that's always been a topic that we bring up when we're fishing is, do you want to separate your lures or not? You know, and sometimes it's nice to have shallower running baits, you know, on the outside and your deeper running baits on the inside, just to gain that separation so you're not getting tangled. But on the other hand, over the years, just from what I've seen, it's weird, but I don't know why. I think it's just because you have a bunch of baits going together. It's almost like a school of bait. When all my rods are the same length, so if I'm running all my stuff 115 feet behind the boat, I seem to do better. I don't know if it's, like I said, because it looks more like a bait school going through all together. That's just my philosophy on it. So, you know, I do both, but if I can, I'll run them all the same length. I just make sure all my stuff is really in tune, so we're not tangling lures. And
yeah,
that's how I run.
I know that, you know, for us, where we've got, you know, so many of the water bodies have, you know, rainbow trout and things like that. And you'll run into those when you're, you know, trolling for the walleye, and those things will tangle up your lines more than anything. So
no doubt.
It's even more so important to keep them, you know, somewhat separated.
Yeah, you know, that's the give and take of it. Yeah, I mean, separate your lures makes life a lot easier as far as tangles go, but we'll never ever get away from it.
No. Nope. No. So I think you probably answered this in the beginning, but I'm just going to throw it out there anyway. Aside from walleye, what's the other species that you'd like to go after?
That's funny you ask, because like I said before, when I grew up, I was fishing muskies. I mean, that was my passion. And then I kind of got out of that passion. I got burned out. And, you know, I got into walleyes, and it drove the tournament bug for me. But, you know, the older I get, the more I fish for bass. I don't know if it's because of my kids or if it's, I just like to catch fish, and obviously bass are pretty worthy of biting on the hook, and pretty easy to catch most of the time. And you know, it's just fun to flat out catch fish. And if I had to do my career over again, if I had to start back in 1995 and make a decision on what I wanted to do, I don't know, I might have probably switched my mind and maybe moved south and started pursuing a bass career. But
really,
you know, it's at the time, you know, the walleye market was really good, and it still is. But man, we were fishing for some big money. We were, you know, first championship that I thought I was going to win was worth $400,000 in the RCL, and you know, I darn near pulled that thing off, and that's a life-changing amount of money. So
sure,
pretty hard to switch species when you got that much, you know, on the line. And you know, but looking back at it, I don't know. I don't regret anything I did, and you know, I'm at this point in my career now where it's too late to change. But I got a little bass boat at home, and you know, I coach the high school team here in town. We have 21 kids that we travel with, and fish some bass tournaments, and it's a good time. And that's what we're here for, just to have a good time.
Nothing wrong with that. And what's the better species you think to catch, the smallmouth or the largemouth?
Oh, smallmouth.
Yeah. Yeah, I figured as
my
much.
son and I fish the Sturgeon Bay Open here every year. It's one of the biggest smallmouth tournaments in the Midwest, and we've been fortunate, and we've done pretty well there over the last 3 or 4 years. And that's just crazy. I mean, when you weigh 29 pounds of smallmouth for 5 fish, it's a pretty crazy day.
Yeah, no doubt. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, maybe at another time we can get you back on and we can talk about bass.
Anytime.
So, if I only gave you one way to fish for walleye, what would it be?
Yep. You can't beat me with a jigging rod in my hand, a spinning reel, and a jig. That's the way I grew up fishing here on the river. And, you know, if I don't have to use live bait again the rest of my life, I'll be the happiest man in the world too. I just love using jigs and plastics and trying to get them to bite. And you know, it's that one-on-one deal. You know, casting a jig and a light spinning rod. That's the way I would do it.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because I'm guessing probably 90% of the people that I've talked to, you know, that's it.
That's it. Yeah. Nothing better than that tick on the end of that line.
No, I can't disagree with you there. Not at all. And we don't really have that issue as far as live bait because we can't use it, so we don't have a choice.
That's probably a good thing.
Yeah, definitely. Hey, Jason, I appreciate you taking the time out, you know, and coming on and talking with us. You know, it was great information, and hopefully we'll have you on again.
Sounds like a plan. Appreciate it.
All right. You have a great night.
All right. Take care.
You too. Would like to say thanks to Fish Face Goods, FX Custom Rods, Slimer's Bait Company, and Max Lures. Appreciate everyone for listening and downloading the show. If you like it, make sure to subscribe on iTunes and Stitcher. There are several past episodes that I'm sure you will find helpful. Please leave a rating on iTunes, good or bad. That's how I can make the show better. And of course, good ratings are always helpful with getting the show more exposure. Have a great one, and remember, get your bite on.